assets engineer. I'll let Morgan sort of go into a bit more detail on his own background as a part of his presentation. But just to set the scene, this is the asset management maturity project that Morgan's working on is building off of an idea that's been percolating for a number of years with our asset management panel. Stuart McLeod, who's a former board director, I think was the one who initially came up with, the idea behind doing something in this space. And certainly a lot of the work of the AM panel over a number of years has been looking at how to better support councils in increasing their asset management maturity. So we did have a session at the state conference about a year and a bit ago now, where we sort of canvassed the delegates of that, which led to the formation of this particular project over a couple of years that Morgan's taken the lead on. So that's the background behind it, but I'll let Morgan take over and sort of speak to the progress that he's made since then and the specific activities that are happening and the opportunities to have your say as a part of this process as well. So Morgan, I'll pass over to you without further ado.
Thank you very much, Josh. I'll just let this load up for everyone first. Excellent. So this session outlines the Asset Management Maturity Project, about what's driving it, what we're doing now, and how councils can be involved with this project coming up. I'll cover the objectives, the evidence base, the plan and the timelines, and the issues that we're seeing, and the proposed recommendation themes, and how you guys in council can participate. So as Josh quickly introduced, I'm Morgan Spruce, the asset management engineer that's been brought upon into the Roads and Transport Directorate for a short time to undertake this project. So this project is a joint initiative of both the New South Wales ACT division of the Institute of Public Works and with local government New South Wales. I'm a civil engineer background. I've worked in council for 16 years across a variety of roles, starting off in design, then moving through to construction, project management, quality assurance, and then found my way into asset management. I'm a chartered engineer with specialties in civil engineering and asset management, a certified senior practitioner of asset management, and also a certified asset management assessor. So the project has three clear objectives. The first is to identify specific deficiencies in asset management practices across New South Wales local government. So where the processes, information, capability and governance are breaking down and what this means for our service, risk and affordability to councils to provide services. Secondly is to develop a set of detailed practical options to address those gaps. The options can be implemented by councils of different sizes and contexts, and they'll join up with asset, finances and the information disciplines within councils. And the third objective is to bring forward an evidence business case for the preferred option or mix of options. 2 points matter here. The analysis is going to be evidence-based. It draws upon the audits, the benchmarking, and the council input. So it's co-designed with our members to ensure feasibility. And success is going to be measured, will be practical. There'll be clearer decision rights, better AMP and LM long-term financial management plan alignment, higher confidence in our data and risks, and hopefully a toolkits that councils can use in their upcoming budget and project cycles. So going over the history, in the last decade of the century, the first decade of this century, we saw a wave of national and state inquiries into local government infrastructure and asset management. Now, across all these reports, the same patterns start to reoccur. There's gaps in governance and decision rights. There's uneven capability of our staff across the sector. There's inconsistent data and valuation practices, and there's weak integration between the planning, finance, and delivery within councils. Many of these recommendations repeat across the years and singling unresolved systemic issues across the sector. And just as importantly, they also point to the interdependent relationship that drives sustainable outcomes in councils between asset management, finance management, and the information technologies that bind it all together. If one of these is weak, the others will struggle in this triad. I want to highlight briefly 3 sets of reports that have shaped and driven the project in the first place. The first is evidence from the New South Wales Auditor General's annual Local Government Financial Audit Series, which report to Parliament on the sector-wide internal controls and governance under the Local Government Act. These reports combine audit opinions with management letter analysis of control deficiencies and recommendations. Each year, findings are categorised across financial reporting and governance, but also across asset management, information technology and other control areas. The methodology distinguishes between new, repeat, and ongoing findings, or the progress or the lack of it that can be tracked over time. Now, the first thing that stands out is in the most recent reports is first, governance, asset management, and IT issues continue to dominate these audit findings across the local government sector. And secondly, a materially high proportion of the risks that or risk issues that are repeat findings, indicating there's a persistent underlying problems rather than one-off exceptions. On the asset management issues specifically, there's been no substantial decline in findings, as shown on the graph shown on the slide here. Common themes include registers and valuation and revaluation controls. So example, support for your assumptions for useful lives and componentizations. And there's other specific areas such as landfill rehabilitation provisioning. What this means for today's discussion is simple. The evidence, audit evidence, consistently points to systematic issues across our sector. Now, the second lot of evidence is the sector's own benchmarking. So first is our own Road and Transport Directorate's Road Management and Bridge Management Report Series, which provides a long-running snapshot of New South Wales Council's road and bridge asset practices and performance. In 2024 report, the adopted road asset management plans reported had been peaking at about 89% in 2014, and this has now since plateaued to about 80%, meaning about 1 in 5 councils currently lack an adopted road asset management plan. The series also looks at the crucial AMP and long-term financial management bridge. In 2024, in the same series of benchmarking, councils self-answered that 54% of them reported that the service cost and risk trade-off from their AMPs were not reflected in their long-term financial management plans. And it highlighted a persistent integration gap, as most councils have these long-term financial management plans in place. In fact, the report flags this as a high-risk area in its summary findings. Now, our second lot of reports for the benchmarking are the National State of the Assets report that are done by our National Office for the Australian Local Governments Association. They monitor the condition, function, capacity planning of our assets and alignment and data confidence across the board nationally for all asset classes that a council looks after. And these document the systemic challenges councils face, including funding constraints, aging assets, and demand growth and climate impacts. It provides consistent evidence of a framework and trend analysis across all these asset classes. The takeaway from this is pretty clear. Planning and integration is the pinch point. While the long-term financial management plan adoptions is widespread, the translation of the information from the asset management plans and assumptions and trade-offs are not made into the long-term financial management plans. As such, councils cannot make transparent level service, cost and risk decisions as part of their planning cycle. And our last lot of reports is government inquiries. Over the past 18 months, there's been several parliamentary inquiries that have zeroed in on council sustainability across the nation, and by extension, asset management practices. In New South Wales, our local parliamentary report into the ability of governments to fund infrastructure and services examined revenue grants, developer contributions, depreciation and performance ratios, cost shifting and disaster impacts, and to put simply, the whole financial architecture that shapes our asset management decisions. Now, the New South Wales government response earlier this year accepted or supported action on key levers that materially affect asset management maturity, reviewing depreciation and how it feeds into the operation performance ratio. They're pausing and redesigning our performance ratios to better reflect our cash maintenance, better reflect our maintenance and renewal efforts, and exploring alternative valuation processes. Hopefully, it will give councillors more clearer, more timely signals about the condition and funding of our assets. On funding certainty, the response also backs a more predictable, needs-based grant system and acknowledges the long-running erosion of our financial assistance grants, issues that disproportionately affect our rural and regional councils here in New South Wales and directly constrain our life cycle planning. At the Commonwealth level, the House of Representatives interim report that was issued earlier this year reflected a widespread concern that current federal settings, including the per capita distribution of our federal assistance grants, are inadequate, and again with flow-on effects to renewal timing and service levels. Taken together, all these reports and inquiries reinforce the three main messages that align with this project. One is incentives and metrics. We need to fix and measure how and measure how we do asset management, and then behaviours can change and follow. Secondly, there's valuation, depreciation, and performance reporting must better inform our asset renewal and maintenance decisions. And thirdly, grant design and disaster funding settings need to support our whole of life asset stewardship, not just when the project starts or replacing damaged infrastructure. That's the policy backdrop that we're working with, and it's an opportunity that where you can currently co-design some practical reforms at this stage while the councils are undergoing a system settings review. Now, this slide shows a project plan on a page, and it shows how our evidence becomes action. The approach is user-centered, starting with council realities, and is designed to be pragmatic so the changes land within the normal budget and planning cycles. Now, there are two concurrent streams as part of this project. One is we've got the main project stream that delivers the core reforms of this project, and then we've got a secondary stream underneath it that delivers quick wins and tools along the way. Now, our main project stream is broken up into 4 phases. First, phase 1, which we've been doing throughout all of this calendar year, has been consolidating the audits, inquiries, and what the benchmarking is telling us. We've been identifying recurring issues across governance, capability, data and evaluation, finance, and delivery. And the output is to produce a validated list of issues and hypothesis for testing later on in our next phase. Phase 2, define, which is what we're currently in at the moment, is testing and refining these issues with our council stakeholders via our single council executive and staff engagement streams, which we'll go over in the following slides. Now, the output here is to produce a challenges and opportunities document, which will be an evidence-based document that reports our problems and opportunities, and they'll be used for our next stage in phase 3. So our phase 3 is where we're doing the design of our reform pathways to test their impacts and the feasibility using 2 complementary methods. One is a theory of change, which maps the central pathway from today's state of affairs to our desired outcome. And looking at the outcomes that we're targeting. We're looking at the preconditions and assumptions that must hold to meet our objectives, and the interventions of changes of behaviour that must occur so that every action that we've got can link and be an outcome that we can measure till we get to our objective. And secondly, we're using a multi-criteria analysis that compares the candidate reform options side by side using transparent criteria such as service outcomes, financial sustainability, risk reduction, and implementality. So looking at the time, capability, dependencies, and our policy fits. We'll weigh each of these criteria with our stakeholders, score and run sensitivity tests so we can look at what preferences are robust, and then we can hopefully design a practical reform pathway set that we can take forward and produce the final report, which will be due in about March next year for our state conference. And phase 4 is to build the business case for the implementation plan, looking at the cost, benefits, risks, the roles and the sequencing and the measures of any reforms that we suggest as part of this preferred reform pathway. Our secondary project stream is hopefully building momentum and quick wins. So it runs in parallel to our main project stream, and it's designed to produce deliverables and impacts that can support our main projects. So being involved with providing standards or documentation or toolkits that can assist councils to improve their asset management maturity. Now, since earlier this year, we've been engaging with our state level stakeholders through policy, regulation, and insurance teams. So our work that we're doing here currently aligns with the guidance and audit expectations. Additionally, we've been coordinating with our other professional bodies, such as LG Professionals, with their finance and planners forums, and also with the Asset Management Council. In recent weeks, we've expanded the consultation now to across the whole of the local government sector, and have briefed all of our institutes, regional chairs and secretaries to assist with the coordination of this activity. I'm also coordinating with other functional networks, for example, our local utility water managers, to capture asset class specific considerations that cut across all of our councils. Now, these are the initial issues that drove the project, and I'll keep this brief because the next following slides will go through the issues as they stand today. But at initiation of this project, we grouped the early evidence into 3 buckets. So we had New South Wales specific issues. So these are largely unique to the New South Wales policy setting. So notably our Red Fleet issue with the RFS recognition of ownership of various plant, and questions about landfill rehabilitation practices. These are important because they drive the audit findings from our Auditor General, and they disclose treatments of these particular asset classes, which may affect Council's reports with the management letters, where the other parts of their asset management systems are quite sound. Secondly, there's known asset management issues. So these are the classic practice gaps that we have across councils and across industry, with asset register completeness and componentisation, valuation issues, and governance and useful lives, and the confidence that we've got in our condition and performance data. So those corresponded to the issues number 2, 3, and 4 on this list here. They all affect our backlog signals, our renewal timings, and our asset management plans credibility. And thirdly, we've got system-wide or sector-wide systemic issues. So pressures that sit above any particular council, such as our workforce capability and turnover, issues with our revenue infrastructure and funding timing, and also our expanded mandate and cost shifting that's affecting our expenditure. So that reflects on our issues number 6, 7, and 8 there. So the initial framing helped us set up the engagement questions and the standards mapping that we used with our early stakeholder engagement earlier this year. And since then, the council, through council consultations and updated evidence, we've currently refined and reorganised these issues into the new issue set. So this is the new issue set that we've used, and the findings are mapped to our 6 categories shown here on this slide. So each of these issues can be mapped to the ISO 55000 series, or the IIM, the NAM FAP, or the GFM issues and sections that we've got in all those different documents. So our issues revolve around leadership. So we're capturing enterprise alignment with the AM system, looking at executive sponsorship, role clarity, decision rights, and culture. Secondly, we've got governance and strategy. So this captures the rules and choices within our asset management system. It looks at our policy settings, the level of service to risk trade-offs at budget time, the integration between our asset management plans and the long-term financial management plans, our key performance indicator integrity, and governance issues, and trying to incorporate climate and our other risks such as cyber and business continuity planning into our asset management systems. Thirdly, we've got people and capability. So this captures competencies, role definitions, retention and succession, change management, and communities of practice that occur both within councils and within the whole sector as a whole. Fourthly, we've got finance and resources. So this captures the financial infrastructure, such as our rates, grants, and contributions, and how expenditure pressures are affecting our delivery capacity, plus looking at our disaster payments and our betterment issues that we're trying to deal with at the moment. Now, fifthly is data, systems, and planning. So this wide-ranging issue set captures our asset information quality, condition and risk confidence, our asset management information systems, which then link in with our GIS and our finance information systems and how it interoperates with each other, and looking at valuation controls and our planning coherence. And lastly, there's asset-specific issues. So this captures specific asset class or asset program issues. And over the next couple of slides, we'll go through these specific issues in each of these categories. So for leadership, what this captures is the executive sponsorship of the AM system as a whole across the whole of a council's organisation. It looks at the role clarity and decision rights between the GMs and the CEOs, the directors, the asset owners, and service managers within a council. It also examines the culture and behaviours that support asset management of how we run the business rather than running individual asset management projects. So issues that are being raised in here is sponsorship or corporate sponsor or executive sponsorship is uneven across some councils, where AM priorities compete with short-term operational pressures. We're finding that the responsibilities are blurred between finance, engineering, and IT, and escalation paths between these different functions remains unclear at some councils. Sometimes there's no standing forum where you can regularly decide who owns the level of service, the cost, and the risk trade-offs, and closing the loop on any actions that need to be generated. And communication of the asset management objectives to middle management and teams within the councils can sometimes be a little bit inconsistent. Next, we've got governance and strategy. So we're looking at the rules and choices that link service, risk, and affordability with the policy planning and metrics. We're looking at the integration of the AMPs and the long-term financial management plans, looking how budget decisions are made in alignment with IPNR. We're also examining risk governance for climate and coastal issues, for risk and business continuity, and oversight through our audit and risk and improvement committees and management forums. So particular issues being raised in here is asset management and long-term financial management coordination and bridging. Sometimes this can be fairly weak where service level trade-offs are not being explicitly decided at budget time. We're looking at decision frameworks, so options analysis, using multi-criteria analysis. Those sort of decision frameworks are sometimes underused at some councils, and the assumptions and criteria that are used to make decisions are sometimes not quite transparent. We're also examining metric integrity, so looking at the backlog definitions, depreciation and useful lives, the OPNR settings, which can vary a little bit between each of the councils. We've got looking at risk integration. So how are climate and coastal risks and your cyber risks being integrated with your asset management plans? And sometimes they can be a little bit inconsistently applied between councils and even between asset classes. We're considering resourcing strategy practice at this level as well. There is guidance provided by the Office of Local Government, we're finding that the asset management plans, the long-term financial management plans, and the workforce planning links within the resource strategy are sometimes not being consistently reconciled. And then just finally is the oversight cadence that's provided by our audit risk and improvement committees, and our executive forums can sometimes be a bit inconsistent where actions and learning loops are not being reliably tracked and advice given back to the councils themselves. People and capability criteria. So what we're looking at here is the competencies and role clarities across the executive, the managers, and the practitioners at councils. We're looking at resourcing and retention and recruitment, succession planning and mentoring, includes change management, internal communications, and communities practice, and then how it all links with the workforce strategy within our IPNR documents. So particular issues is capability and turnover. So we've got hard to fill roles in councils sometimes, particularly around the engineering, the GIS, and the financial space. And this particularly affects regional councils where your high churn of roles and staff disrupts continuity of the council processes. We also include role clarity. So sometimes there's overlap or gaps between the finance, engineering, and IT, where there's unclear ownership of various issues within your asset management information systems. And that also affects then asset registers and the valuation of various assets and the valuation projects that you do each year as you go through audit time. There's a skills mix. So there's a variability in the literacy of risk, life cycle costings, depreciation and useful lives, and operational options analysis across staff. And sometimes it's also limited with exposure with our cyber and business continuity implications. And we've got change management. So sometimes asset improvement in some councils relies on just a few champions within councils, which limit the structure or engagement on onboarding of new staff and to share lessons learned. And that can also then fall into that lessons learned are not accurately captured or shared across the organisation. We're also looking at time and load. So as part of the business as usual pressures within council, sometimes this crowds out some of the implementations and improvements that are recommended in an asset management plan, where we're not able to improve the conditional risk reviews or improve our data quality for those assets. And finally, we also got issues about knowledge transfer. So the reliance on consultants to do work without then a systemic handover of information. And that can also then go to also like patchy mentoring and bringing on new staff or new junior staff into an organisation. Our next one for finance and resources. So we're looking at the revenue architecture within councils, examining the expenditure pressures that councils have and our program delivery and procurement constraints. So particular issues that have been raised here is our revenue settings, such as our rate pegging, cost shifting, grant uncertainty, that reduces headrooms for doing asset renewals. Our federal assistant grants erosion particularly hits smaller and regional councils quite the hardest. We've got issues to do with integration to planning. So the AMP assumptions are not adequately translated into the long-term financial management plan. So renewal and asset needs are being under-signalled or being played down in budget papers that go forward to council. We're also looking at cost and delivery pressures. So our escalating unit rates, supply chain volatility, our contractor availability, and internal capacity constraints within the own council's workforce can lead to schedule slippages and backlog growth within the whole capital works and asset works plans. There's procurement fragmentation sometimes, where a council by council approach misses opportunities for program level procurement or shared panels or regional collaboration. Some regions do this well, others are struggling alone with each other. And then finally, we're also looking at signals and incentives. So we've got KPI and ratio settings that we've previously just talked about. Depreciation lives can also distort investment signals and encourage sometimes short-term fixes across the system, or the substitution of OPEX and CAPEX expenditure within the councils. And finally, we're looking at assurances and valuation. So looking at the reval efforts that put strain on council resources each year. And sometimes there's no clear cut-off plan or extensions to our revaluation plans, which then chew into council's staff another time and unable to complete these activities quite on schedule, which creates end-of-year pressures and repeat audit findings for those councils. So data systems and planning. So it captures like all the information, asset information, quality issues such as our registers, our performance and our risk, and looking at data and governance. It looks at our interoperability of our asset management information systems, our GIS and our financial systems, and looking at planning coherence. So how we measure our demand and level of service, our life cycle strategies, our programs and our valuation controls. So issues that are being raised here are asset registers. So we've got incomplete or inconsistent records. We've got unclear asset boundaries and ownership issues, and misrecognition of some assets between different asset classes or places within your asset hierarchy. We've got condition and performance confidence in that data of our asset condition and performance data. So sometimes this scales with by asset class. Sometimes we often have very good condition reports for our roads assets, but sometimes for our stormwater or our community assets, this data can be a little bit lacking. There's instances where our quality control can sometimes be a bit inconsistent with reviewing this data, and sometimes criticality as an issue isn't reliably identified for some asset classes. This needs to be calibrated across your asset registers, but it limits our risk-based prioritisation of issues when considering your whole assets within the council as a whole. You've got risk register issues, so links from risk in your AMPs are not making it to the risks that are shown in the budgets, and those linkages can be sometimes quite weak. Controls and triggers aren't consistently maintained where we do have them, and lesson learned loops are sometimes a bit ad hoc or not fully practiced or developed within some councils. We've got interoperability and lineage issues where we may not have a common asset ID system as part of our register, which then leads to issues with reconciliation issues between our asset information systems, GIS info, and what's on the financial books. this then obviously leads to issues of trying to do revaluations and provide confidence to the auditors when it comes time to getting audits done. And we're also looking at valuation project governance. So the end of year stress that councils sometimes have with not having a clear plan or a plan that's underutilised, which leads to issues within staff feeling quite pressured to provide these services to council and the auditors. Unit rates and assumptions are sometimes uneven. Revaluation triggers are sometimes not exactly known, and this sort of impairment can affect how it's consistently applied to the whole of council's assets and then presented to the auditors at the end of the year. And finally, we're looking at planning coherence. So looking at demand and level of service changes and assumptions are consistently applied to the program options or objectives of each asset class. AMP chapters within various AMP plans of various classes aren't entirely coherent or systemic across the whole of the asset classes within a council. Key performance indicators and sets are sometimes ad hoc, and the evidence base, such as the evidence and data for condition, risk, and evaluation, don't always line up. And there's usually sometimes sensitivity testing for your asset management plans sometimes isn't coherent or not done at all in some councils. And finally, there's some asset-specific class issues which affect particular asset classes or asset programs that can affect councils. Particularly, this is related to some New South Wales specific issues. So we've got local water utilities. So outside of Sydney and Newcastle, the local councils are the local water utilities, and they have particular regulatory alignment and pricing pressures that are applied to these councils. Sometimes there's a variability in the planning maturity and asset conditions across these councils, and there's a limited ability to share capability and systems and support across councils. We've got issues to do with our red fleet, which are currently being looked at with a parliamentary inquiry and a government response, which is due fairly soon. And also landfill, we've got inconsistencies in rehabilitation and closure provisions that are affecting the methodology and assumptions about the risk and monitoring of these assets and how it implicates or can affect the financial books. And finally, we've got integration of coastal management programs for coastal councils. So the sector itself hasn't been static. Many councils have already acted on past recommendations, and in some circumstances, they've actually moved on and get quite mature. Now, I don't want to prejudge any recommendations that we'll be bringing forward as part of the consultation and into the following documents next year, but there is an emergent direction of clustering these issues into a small set of broad themes. So this gives us a shared language for co-designing and testing the options through the next phase of this project. So the issues are related to the recommendations are directly related to the issues that we just saw before. So we're looking at aligned to leadership and culture, focusing on enterprise ownership of the asset management system, executive support, clear decision rights, and a cadence that keeps our level of service, cost, and risk trade-offs visible and owned by particular people in the organisation. We're looking at coherent governance and strategy. So making the choices transparent and repeatable across our policy settings, having a visible integration of asset management plans and our long-term financial management plans at budget time, and having consistent performance measures and integration of various risks such as climate and cyber into our plans and funding decisions. We're looking at skilled people, so lifting the capability and retention. We've defined competencies, role clarity, and targeted development, so councils can execute their asset management improvement plans with confidence and not just document them in their asset management plans. We're looking at adequate resources, so aligning the funding and delivery capability to the life cycle needs, looking at our revenue settings, expenditure pressures, and program delivery capability and procurement. And also related is reliable data. So building trust in the information base that we've got in council, having complete and reconciled registers and consistent condition and risk methodologies. So you can do confidence, we'll use the grading with confidence and having robust valuation project controls. Having appropriate processes, so keeping it simple and durable, having the core AM processes that connect demand, level of service, lifecycle strategies, programs, and have a practical integration across the asset management systems, the GIS and the financial data and books. And then recommendations to do with targeted uplift for particular asset classes. So as we move through our phases 2 and 3, we'll use this structure to make sure the recommendations are feasible and can be used in your context within council to ensure a ready flow into the next budget and planning cycle. So an engagement framework has been developed in phase 1 for the whole project, and is now underpinning our consultations that we're doing as part of phases 2 and 3. So it has 3 distinct linked layers. One is our stakeholder engagement strategy, which sets the principles and objective for inclusive, transparent, and evidence-based engagement. Our stakeholder engagement plan translates this strategy into practical actions and timelines with particular responsibilities for undertaking the activities. And as a subset of that engagement plan, we've got our council engagement plan, which operationalises our council-facing stakeholder engagement via 2 streams across 3 tiers of engagement, which we'll go through now. So our engagement is done through 2 streams, which are complementary and both used as a single council format to maximise candour and to make scheduling for my end quite easy. One is our executive stream. So the purpose of this is to test the strategic alignment and decision frameworks within a council, looking at how service, risk and affordability choices are made and governed. This involves working with GMs and CEOs, the directors of infrastructure or your corporate finance or your planning, plus any particular AM sponsors if they're designated within your council organisation. We're looking at particular topics such as our trade-offs between our AM piece and the long-term financial management plan, and looking how assumptions are made and produced in reports. We're looking at governance and decision rights so we're looking at who owns issues, what are the escalation parts, and what are the interfaces with the audit, risk and improvement committees. We're looking at performance signals such as backlog definitions, OPNR interpretations, the depreciation and our confidence grading. And we're also saying how they integrate climate and cyber risks into programs and funding choices, and how the resourcing strategy with your asset management planning, your long-term financial management plan and your workforce planning is worked in together as part of your resource strategy and how we can make it coherent. Our second stream involves frontline service staff within council, so middle management right down to frontline staff. So the purpose here is to look at the lived experience of all those people who apply asset management practices day to day in council and who can advise about what works or what hinders a good asset management practice at their council. So we're looking at asset management personnel and engineers, but also looking at finance staff, our operation and maintenance teams, our design teams if you've got it, and also your planners, your IT or your GIS or your risk staff as appropriate, just depending on what your council organisation structure is. So we're looking at issues to do with our asset registers, about where the boundaries are within your organisation and your assets hierarchy, looking how you reconcile the information in your asset management system, your GIS data and your financial books. We're looking at condition and performance issues and your risk methods. So looking at how you do your sampling, your grading of your data for your assets, and looking at criticality and consequences of assets failing. We examine looking at issues to do with valuation or revaluation process controls that you do each year, and looking to see how the practical mechanics of the information that you provide in an asset management plan is transferred to the long-term financial plan, and see where the evidence suggests that there's gaps within those processes with the council staff. So for both streams, any information that's provided with these streams is confidential by default, and we're not going to be publishing individual council names, but bringing out or surfacing the issues that are brought upon or brought out by these council engagements and seeing if they are being applied or being raised consistently across the sector. These two streams, with the executive stream and the frontline staff, these streams work together to find out how decisions are made. So executives stream will confirm how choices are made, and the frontline teams will say how the choices are actually playing out on the ground. This combination of streams gives us a realistic picture of what's feasible going forward, and hopefully will inform the recommendations going forward into phase 3 of this project. Now, we're looking at 2 engagement streams. So they're the who of the participation. These tiers of engagement are the how of the participation. So the 3 tiers will be used together to build an informed picture of council's capability across the whole local government sector. So our first tier of engagement is a short questionnaire for both the executive and the frontline staff streams. So this involves a brief, about 5-minute survey that's going to be sent out to capture the perceptions of maturity, key challenges, and the supports that are needed across councils. We'll have the separate links for the executive and frontline staff so we can see how strategy and practice perspectives are playing out within local councils across the state. And this will be distributed across your relevant council teams via a primary contact in each council. So we're going to be using this as a baseline to get information from across councils about all these different issues that we've just been talking about. And the first pulse of this survey should be rolling out at the end of October or early November. Now, our second tier of engagement is having single council workshops, again, with both streams, for an executive stream and for frontline staff. The executive stream is typically going to be a shorter half-hour to an hour session, where the workshops involving frontline staff are expected to be at least an hour and a half to 2 hours. These streams both refine our current issues that we've got into a clear set of challenges that may be presented at your council. We'll share what's working locally within your council and what support is needed. And it's also a forum where we can sense check what emerging pathway reforms, or reform pathway, should I say, will be realistic, supported, and impactful for the councils. We'll be drawing on the lived experience of the staff to see what helps or hinders good asset management practice, council by council. And finally, our tier 3 engagement. This is where we're doing targeted reviews or deep dives that involve short, focused reviews in investigations where this added depth of information will add some value to this project. And it may validate some practices that we see as we engage with councils, and hopefully that may be able to use or be able to draw upon councils to use ready-to-use documents or artefacts or guidelines or tools that can be used and then shared across the rest of councils across the state if there's particularly good issues of asset management practice that have been observed. But these will be done on an ad hoc basis, and we're not expecting too many of these to be done across the whole of the project timeline over the next few months. Again, all these interactions, engagements that we're doing, either with the questionnaires or with the workshops, the information will be confidential. So anything that you'll share about your particular council will be anonymised within the reports that we'll be issuing later on. If you're interested, nominations are through your region secretaries and chairs. We've already got some early volunteers already lined up from various councils. But if you're looking to engage a bit more, I've got some information on the next slide that will go over it. There's minimal preparation that's needed from any of the council participants for any of these tiers. That work is being done on my side. But what we will be asking for is for a single point of contact within council to facilitate the engagement. In short, the tier 1 engagements provide us a baseline across the whole of the local government sector, where tier 2 will add some depth and context to any information that we're drawing out, and the tier 3 information validates some targeted areas so we can create evidence base for our challenges and reform opportunity document that will be issued in the coming year, and that will be used to help with options testing in phase 3. So how to participate. So this is where I've got the quick call to action. Look, stakeholder engagement is currently underway. If your councils are interested in participating in either the Tier 1 questionnaire or the Tier 2 workshops, can you please coordinate internally first within your council and decide and discuss your participation with your supervisor or your leadership teams, and then have them nominate a primary contact for coordination. An information pack is currently available for council contacts that describes the point of this project. This project is part of a broader Road and Transport Directorate initiative to lift the asset management maturity across New South Wales councils, and is a direct benefit of RT membership of those councils across the state. You can subscribe to the RTD Insider, which is our monthly newsletter, for additional updates, resources, industry news, and our advocacy that we're currently doing with the RTD. And you can stay connected with the IPWEA on our various social channels shown there. Or you can directly connect with me on LinkedIn, and we can have a discussion about how you can participate in this exciting project. So hopefully that's the nice overview of the whole project, and I'm happy to take any questions from any of the participants.
Thanks, Morgan. Which why you have a drink, mate, and catch your breath. I know you've been speaking for the best part of 40 minutes. Yeah, any questions for Morgan with regard to we've got one here from Arif Hassan. Think your slides are known, relevant to most councils. The key focus in identifying how this project and councils can collaborate effectively and establishing mechanisms to monitor and encourage. What is the first step of engagement, please? So, Morgan, did you want to take that one? What's the overall question is, what's the first step of the engagement process?
So, yeah, your first step is to nominate interest within your council to participate. Either someone in your leadership team, if you're working, maybe someone in your asset management team, get them to contact me or our team here at the RTD, and we can begin that conversation. Just purely because of the number of councils that we're dealing with, it's a little bit easier if we've got a primary contact point. But if you've got a primary contact point for the questionnaires and about how they can be distributed across the organisation, that may be different to our contact point for our Tier 2 workshops, which are a little bit more specific about rounding out council personnel within various teams. But yeah, if you're interested or you think there's some benefit in participating in this, have a chat with your team leaders or your frontline supervisors and get them involved. Get the engagement pack that we've got available, and then have a discussion, then come to us saying that you're interested to participate.
Yep, great. And Morgan, you've got the first one of your in-person workshops happening tomorrow, is that correct?
Yeah, so I'm doing, as part of doing this work, not only we're doing individual councils, but we're also participating in sector-wide community forums. So tomorrow is the Central West Water Alliance up at Dubbo that bring together a bunch of councils from Northern New South Wales and Western New South Wales together, particularly looking at the water and sewage space as local water utilities. But nevertheless, we've also got interest from our county councils who look after our water and sewage for regions of councils, as well as looking at other forums such as our finance and our planners forums and communities of practice that are being coordinated through LG New South Wales.
Yeah, and look, just to follow on from Morgan's point there, I think it's worth highlighting that the whole intent behind this project is to look at all asset classes, not just on the roads and bridges that the RTD have traditionally focused on. So whilst this might seem like just an extension of some of our existing work, it certainly is casting that broader net across all the asset classes that councils deal with. And look, we've had really good support from the Water Directorate as a part of the engagement in that water and sewer space. They're very supportive of what we're doing, and we've had sort of similar conversations with other groups and associations that might be covering different asset classes. So I guess that's one to take away. Depending on who's on the call, if you are focused in one or other asset classes, certainly do engage those others in your organisation that might cover different asset classes. So Morgan, you've sort of mentioned the process in terms of the engagement. What's going to be the output at the other end of this process? So
we're looking to have two primary documents. So we're looking at options, challenges and potential reform options paper that lists down challenges and opportunities that councils are facing. That will be issued or produced by the end of this year and issued probably in January, which then clearly focuses what the particular issues and challenges are across the council local government space in New South Wales. So though we've mentioned these issues in the preceding slides, some may scale up in importance for councils based on the feedback. There might be additional issues that are being floated up or been identified that aren't really readily captured already. And there are some issues that may just be put onto the back burner because they're being looked at by other agencies or other groups of people, such as RFS issue. Once we get the advice from government, that issue may get hit on the head or reduce in importance. So we're producing that document in January, and then that will flow through with continued engagement still for the councils that need to participate but can't do it by the end of this year. We'll still take the engagement with councils through to next year, and that will then go into our reform document, which will outline our the set of reforms or the reform pathway, which will hopefully be most cost effective and impactful to councils. So that reform document will be issued probably in about March, in time ready for our state conference, as well as a business case to drive this project forward in the future.
Yeah, thanks, Morgan. So certainly the just to follow on again from those comments, the intent is that the board will have a look at the business case around the options, and our intent is that we will continue this work in some form moving forward. We're just not quite clear 100% on what that's going to look like yet. But having state conference in April as that forum to sort of share with the broader membership where we think it could go. Any more questions from the audience?
I'm sure there must be some questions that might be coming in, so people furiously typing away there.
Hopefully that's right there. So I guess Morgan, a couple more from me. What's the thought behind sort of doing those one-on-one type sessions with councillors?
So talking about our workshops?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've had our region chapters and chairs reach out to various councils across the state in the various regions. We're trying to get a good mix of the metro and regional, the large and the small councils that are doing asset management quite well and well publicised it, and those councils that are sometimes just so busy that they really don't get to interact. We're trying to get a nice spread around the state of all these councils so we can bring on a representative amount of issues from across the local government sector rather than focusing on purely metro issues. So we're looking at undertaking this between later October, November into December. There will be spillover of council engagements through into January as well, or February next year. Any councils that want to engage, we'll engage with. If you don't get lined up before Christmas, that's okay. We'll still get your engagement done and bring on those issues and lessons learned, looking at the opportunities and issues that you face and incorporate that into the final report. So that will continue between now and December and then into next year as we continue the next phase of this project.
And there's no cost associated with those forums?
No, so as long as the councils can provide a space to bring their workforce in or their participants in to actually do this, there's no cost to the councils other than just the time to actually do the engagement and provide a facility with some AV to plug in a laptop. Yeah, there's no additional cost to councils to undertake this engagement. Particularly also if you're not up to providing that engagement, we're doing the workshops with council staff or with the executive. Nevertheless, participate by doing the questionnaire. That is more of a broad-based, easy to do engagement piece that just requires you access to a computer and an ability to do an online survey that should only take about 5 minutes to do.
See, someone's typing, so I'll just wait a moment for the... Yep. So Kirsty's just asked Morgan if we can share the slides after today. So I think that should be fine. Just before you answer, I would note that we are recording this session and it'll be made available through the RTD website as well.
And if there's anyone that wants to discuss anything or some questions arise after the live recording today, yeah, don't hesitate to contact us here at the RTD or get onto us with one of our social handles. We'll be able to provide some of this information directly to you as well.
Yeah, Yeah, certainly. So I think, Kirsty, if you do want a copy, just maybe reach out to us directly and we can send you through a copy to share with your executive.
Yep. And having said that, we do have that information pack that's currently available. We'll update it with some of the information that we just provided here today with a link to the YouTube video once it's published. And yeah, that I think it's about 4 or 5 pages of simple information that's ready to give to a council executive. So it just gives a brief overview of what the project is, what we're expecting, why we're doing it, and what the deliverables will be for a council to participate, either with the questionnaires or with the workshop. Yeah, so that engagement information pack is sitting there ready to go as well.
Great. All right. Thank you, Morgan. I think that's probably it for the questions. So we might wrap up a little bit early and give everyone 5 minutes in their day back. But yeah, thanks all for joining. Thank you, Trish. Trish has just posted some info about the next webinar, which will be on the 19th of November, about 4 weeks' time. That's on a report that we are just finalising at the moment, which is an update to our construction cost forecasts. It's a report we push out every 2 to 3 years, just looking at the changing nature of commodity prices and labour and those sorts of things. So please do have a look at that, put that in your calendar. Morgan, thanks once again, and hopefully we'll see you all next month.